Would you believe me if I told you that at COP28, they're talking about whales and dolphins and how whale and dolphin carcasses can actually help reduce climate change? And so we need to protect whales and dolphins. Now, I know that doesn't sound ridiculous to protect whales and dolphins, but did you actually ever think that protecting whales and dolphins would actually reduce greenhouse gases? Well, we're going to talk about that and why on this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. This is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And today we're going to be talking about what's happening with the ocean, because I'm not sure if you're ever going to believe me about this, but whale and dolphins can actually, and marine mammals can actually help climate change, reduce climate change. Not provide more climate change, but actually reduce climate change. And that's one of the sessions at COP28 is going in Dubai. We'll hear about the critical role of ocean animals and how they play in capturing and storing carbon in the fight against climate change. I found this, and I don't know how good this source is. It's the Mirror, and I think it's a British newspaper, but they kind of come up with some really interesting points. And it's something that I've always known, but I never really thought, hey, we need to protect, whales and dolphins just because of climate change. But this makes a lot of sense, to be honest. I've just never thought about it in that way. And the idea behind this is that a healthy ocean will have healthy animals, right? So if we protect the ocean from everything, not just from climate change, but from everything. We'll have healthy populations of whales and dolphins and marine mammals. We'll have healthy populations of phytoplankton. We'll have healthy populations of corals and seagrasses and mangroves and salt marshes. All of the things that help reduce climate change. Now, we all know as humans, as a species, we've really destroyed the ocean to this point, and we continue to do that. We are trying to help. There are a lot of us who are out there trying to help to put in measures that will ensure these oceans will stay healthy or will get back to what was once considered healthy, right? But we don't really understand how this really helps. And by helping marine mammals, especially the greater whales, the larger whales, we really help in storing carbon as well as feeding an animal, well, not really, I guess, feeding a species that will also help reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that are in the atmosphere. And so the Whale and Dolphin Conservation Group is telling delegates that these ocean giants, the greater whales, should be seen as a solution to the crisis of climate change, with a role just as important as rainforests. So it says, while much attention is given to the role trees play, which we always see in Canada, actually, they said, well, we're gonna plant 1 billion trees. That was actually a program that the government of Canada was really touting. Cetaceans are often overlooked. And Ed Goodall, the co-author of this report, Whales in Hot Water, warns climate change is harming whale populations by undermining the health and reproduction. So we all know that. Right? We know warming oceans are not good for a lot of the animals, right? It disrupts their food. It disrupts their migration patterns. It disrupts how they reproduce. Other things that disrupt them are, water pollution, plastic pollution, a lot of other things that will not help, right? And so, Ed Goodall said essentially, we need rapid action from governments to tackle the root cause of climate change so that wild animals can return and thrive. So, in other words, reduce greenhouse gases by reducing fossil fuels. That's the big thing. That's the big ask. But also help protect whales and dolphins by not only reducing greenhouse gases, but by instilling protections. Because, whales can live up to 100 years old. Right? So that's important, and I'll tell you why in a second. But before I tell you that, whales are in a critical need of help. A lot of whales are actually considered, they're considered endangered. They're considered critically endangered. The northern right whale is critically endangered. The humpback is just coming off being critically endangered. Manatees are endangered in certain spots. And so a lot of these animals are, essentially being, being extirpated in their areas, and some of them are going extinct. The vaquita in the Sea of Cortez, the California Sea, those animals are being pretty much almost extinct. And so it becomes a problem when you really think about it, right? And so we want to make sure that these animals are protected. And to do that, and here's the reason why, right? These animals, when they die, these large animals, they sink, right? And when they sink to the bottom of the ocean, right, the carbon that is transferred to the depths where it remains, the carbon is actually transferred to the depth where it remains for centuries. It's claimed that on average, a great whale can absorb 33 tons of carbon dioxide in their lifetime. So just as a comparison, a tree, meanwhile, removes up to 48 pounds a year. So not even close to the amount that a whale could do. And they can live up to 100 years old. But if a whale carcass does not sink to the bottom because it's been hunted or it washes up on a beach, which we've seen a lot of, the carbon is released back into the atmosphere. So you know how we see those videos? I'm not sure if you have. It's kind of a crazy video. But when whales wash up on a beach and they're just there dead, unfortunately, for a number of different reasons. Some of them we don't know. Other times we do know. Could be plastic pollution poisoning. It could be they came up because of noise pollution and they ended up getting the bends. They could be lost from their echolocation or their navigation threw them off. But essentially they're on the beach and they're kind of, they get all the gases within, as they die and decompose, all the gases within the whales kind of put a lot of pressure internally, let's just say. And the whales can actually blow up. And when they blow up and they start to decompose, that carbon dioxide gets released into the atmosphere. And that's not good, right? We don't want to see that. So we want to make sure they sink to the bottom because that provides, the way carbon is just kind of sort of absorbed into the bottom of the ocean. Now, also the iron-rich excrement, the poop, whale poop, the mammals produce is also beneficial, providing perfect growing conditions for plankton that capture an estimated 40% of all CO2, 4 times the amount caught by the Amazon rainforest. Just think about that. That's 4 times the amount caught of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere absorbed into plankton, right, across the ocean. That's huge. Now, this story is not new, right? We knew this was happening, and one of the people who have really made that popular is Dr. Asha DeVos. She is a friend of mine. She works out of mainly Sri Lanka. She discovered the non-migrating blue whale population just south of Sri Lanka. She's done a lot of work with whales, not only blue whales, but other whales as well. She spoke around the world in multiple occasions. She's a great speaker. If you ever have a chance to go see her in person to speak, please do. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's definitely memorable. And she's just a really nice person, to be honest. She's just a fantastic person. But she used to talk about this all the time. She's like, she studies whale poop and why whale poop is so important to the ocean. A lot of times we don't think that whales and dolphins and marine mammals are important to the ocean. They are an iconic species and people want to protect them. They're very easy to protect. But since the time that humans discovered that they could be used for oil, hunting marine mammals was the thing to do. It provided oil for, lighting candles and all these different types of things within the Industrial Revolution. And now, we realize how wrong that was. And now we have other sources of energy. And so we don't need whales to provide that energy. We don't need the oil to provide that energy. However, unfortunately, the energy that we discovered is now causing the climate change that is not good for us right now. That's really changing a lot of our climate and atmosphere and oceans as well as whale populations. So we're still giving it to them when we shouldn't be. But regardless, we need to protect them. Also, what we need to do is we need to protect the krill, which is a major food source of baleen whales in the Southern Ocean. And those have decreased by 30% since the 1980s. That's a huge decrease. As a result, many animals no longer migrate to breeding grounds there. And the WDC report says, this is the Whale and Dolphin Conservation Report, says warming oceans force bottlenose dolphins north to California where they prey on smaller harbor porpoises. So, we're seeing a lot of changes just because of these of climate change. So they need to be protected at all costs. So, Dr. Sylvia Earle, quote from her said, An ocean full of whales will help us all. They and dolphins offer a lifeline in the fight against climate change. The world must see what stands to be lost if we continue to decimate habitats. And that's really sums it up, to be honest. As usual, Dr. Sylvia Earle sums it up in the perfect way. And it's something that we need to fight for, something that we need to really make sure that people at COP28 understand the damage that we are causing oceans due to climate change and how much a healthy oceans can actually help reduce climate change. But to reduce climate change, we really must focus on reducing the amount of greenhouse gases that we release from industrial processes, right? It's not just, fossil fuels. It's concrete. It's a lot of different things, but the fossil fuel industry is at, sort of the source of it, right? And a lot of that we need to reduce. And it's going to be difficult because, as we've seen even from COP28, where you have a lot of governments basically saying, I don't think you know that we'll never be able to reduce fossil fuels. That's ridiculous. If you think that's going to happen, that's ridiculous. It's going to happen because we're going to fight for it. And the way to fight for it is to really go to your government, to the voting polls, and say, we are voting for a government to reduce climate change, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to do whatever we can to save this planet. That's the only way we're really going to get somebody in there. Now, look, in Canada, we have a government here who is fighting for climate change. Whether they're doing it right or wrong is, another thing, but they're doing something about it. The opposition, the government that wants to get into power, is really just manipulating people to believe that the main thing that the government is doing, the carbon tax, is an awful thing and it's causing inflation. It's really throwing off Canadians and making Canadians pay so much more, which is false. But governments are like parties are doing this so that when they get into power, they are not going to do anything about climate change. It's really important that we all vote for governments that are going to do something about climate change. If they're going to do nothing, if they're going to reward fossil fuel companies just like they have in the past, these are not governments that you want in if climate change is important to you, right? It's affecting our economy. In Canada alone, we've put out billions of dollars in damage, and we haven't scratched the surface of damage that climate change is causing us. Last summer was a true indication of what our future is going to look like, with forests burning, hurricanes coming, weather getting worse and worse, and just more extreme and less predictable. We're entering an El Nino, which God knows what that's going to do to our system, not only in Canada, but around the world. And we're going into a dangerous phase, and to reward political parties with the power of government to not do anything about climate change is not going to help. It's going to make things so much worse. So much worse. It's very important, no matter how you feel about what government is in power, that you vote for somebody who's going to do something about climate change. We have that power. If you talk to every member of government about climate change and they have a positive response to changing climate change and they do it, or they attempt to do it at least, vote for them in. If not, I would stay away. That's my opinion. That's how I see it, because that's just a non-negotiable for me. As a citizen, it's a non-negotiable. And it's something that we have to stand up as citizens of each of our countries who are in a democracy, who have the choice to vote in their governments. Whether you think you have a voice or not, please go out and vote for a party that is going to do something about climate change. Okay? That's it for today's episode. I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Whales and dolphins are important for reducing climate change. I just mentioned it. If you really want to think about it, think of a great whale, a whale that's massive. And when it dies, which is unfortunate, but after 100 years or 80 years or so, it absorbs a lot of carbon dioxide. And that goes down when they sink to the bottom of the ocean in natural death. Then they sequester, that carbon gets sequestered at the bottom of the ocean, and it doesn't go back into the atmosphere. We need to do that more. We need to make sure that happens. So natural death, sinking of whales, and making sure that we protect the heck out of those whales. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know. You can email me, or you can, not email me. You can email me if you want. You can go to speakupforblue.com/contact, fill out the contact page. But you can DM me on Instagram. It's a lot faster. I respond a lot faster on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean. It's just the name of this podcast, all the words scrunched together, at How to Protect the Ocean. Love to hear your thoughts on this. If you knew this was happening, if you didn't know it was happening, how you would protect whales and dolphins and marine mammals along your seas in your country. I'd love to hear from you at How to Protect the Ocean. And if you know someone who really enjoys these types of episodes and they want to learn more, please feel free to share them. I would love to hear that. And that's it for today's episode. I want to thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.